Have you ever done everything right for your health, eaten better, taken supplements, tried to sleep, and still felt anxious, inflamed, exhausted, or wired at night? This episode is for you. If your sleep feels broken, your anxiety feels physical, your body feels inflamed or off, or you're going through hormonal changes and nothing seems to help. Today, we're going to connect the dots between gut health, sleep, anxiety, inflammation, and hormones, and explain why treating them separately often doesn't work. By the end of this episode, you'll understand why your gut might be driving your anxiety and sleep issues, why inflammation keeps the nervous system stuck on high alert, and why menopause can completely disrupt sleep, and what actually helps without guessing or overdoing it. My guest today is Dr. Eric. He works with patients at the intersection of gut health, nervous system regulation, sleep, and inflammation, especially when traditional approaches haven't worked out. Now, I'm really excited to have you here, Dr. Eric. Before we dive in, can you briefly share what led you to focus on gut health, sleep, and anxiety, and what you kept seeing in patients that made you realize that these issues are deeply connected?
Yeah, thanks for having me, Stacy. The root of all disease is inflammation. And when you look at a body, you have three major bosses. You have the brain and the central nervous system. You have endocrine glands, which release hormones, ovaries, testes, thyroid, adrenals, etc. And then you have the immune system. And when your body's in a physiological food fight, the question to ask is who threw the first French fry? And 99 out of 100 times, the principal is going to find out it's the gosh darn immune system. And you were talking about anxiety, and I want to dive right in and tell your listeners that every single mood disorder known to humans, whether it's anxiety, depression, major depressive disorder, obsessive compulsive, intrusive thoughts, ADD, ADHD, schizophrenia, and even, a strong bipolar, they're all based with having higher inflammatory cytokines, higher levels of inflammation than healthy control groups that don't suffer those mood issues. So the job in healthcare, the job of your provider should be why inflammation? So 10 different people can have the exact same anxiety with 10 different reasons. And your job as a doctor is to go deep and say, but why anxiety? And one easy one is you've heard of hangry, but have you heard of anxiety or agitation or attention deficit? Those are all low blood sugar moments where the brain starts to panic because you don't have steady fuel, and you can get agitated, or you can get hangry, or you can get anxious, or you can have insomnia, all from fuel problems. What about steady oxygen? You can have a heavy menstrual bleed, and now your ferritin on lab is a 12, and you went transiently anemic, and you can't carry steady oxygen to the brain. Well, ferritin is also your storage of iron, and we know it takes iron to make dopamine for ambition and drive, feelings of self-worth, hopefulness, courage, decisiveness, and the ability to finish tasks, dopamine. And dopamine helps conquer anxiety. So in our clinic, the job is to find the underlying causes of inflammation that are driving these symptoms, remove them, and then give the body what it needs to come into homeostasis and balance with that neuroendocrine immune triangle, or that brain endocrine gland immune system balance.
Oh, I love it. It's so true. Now, why do so many people with anxiety or racing thoughts also have gut issues, bloating, food sensitivities, inflammation, even if they don't realize the two are connected?
Yeah, so the first time, so I'm getting older, still doing stupid things like kickboxing and powder skiing and running hoops with my 16-year-old. But a gazillion years ago, I read this book called The Second Brain, and it was written by a great medical doctor named Dr. Gerber. And basically, what he was saying is the biggest bundle of nerves is in our skulls, in our cranium, but the second biggest bundles of nerves and neurology is in the guts. And the gut feeling is real. You can't swallow the truth. You bit off more than you can chew. There is a actual brain and actual neurology in our guts that makes neurochemistry, that makes neurotransmitters, that makes molecules of serotonin and acetylcholine. So you literally have an innate thought in your gut. And in that gut, you are communicating with the brain gut axis through the vagal bundle. And then the gut is communicating with the rest of the body through hormones, nervous system, and immune molecules. And that depends on everything from your concussion history to feeling great and going to Nicaragua and getting E. coli on a surf trip and popping open leaky gut to the antibiotics you took excessively for the earaches that wouldn't have been there if you avoided dairy or whatever the underlying cause was as a 4-year-old.
Right.
So the gut brain axis and the brain gut axis are totally simpatico. Starsky and Hutch, Ponch and John, Thelma and Louise, they ride together. And when one gets set off, you can have real problems. I love watching the Broncos win on Saturday, and I love watching a good tackle. But as a doctor, I also have to say, every time I read a rat study, I say a prayer and say, thank you for this information. I'm going to use it with humans to my best ability. But there's some gnarly rat studies, and one of them is they whack the rat, concuss it, and give it leaky gut. It hits its head and goes into leaky gut, right? So did your 7-year-old just fall off the balance beam? Did your lacrosse player just get hit hard? Is their gut biome intact? Did they just pop open leaky gut and now inflammation's starting that's going to set off depression, anxiety, brain fog, fatigue, exercise intolerance? Or do we go, okay, kids need sports and learn how to win and lose? If they get a concussion, what do we do to make sure not only we do brain therapies, but gut therapies and gut brain and brain gut therapies? So in that study, they then whacked the rat again, a different rat, but they zapped the vagal bundle, the nerve that connects the brain with the gut axis, and the TBI symptoms still happen, but the leaky gut didn't happen. So again, things like stress management, meditation, surrounding yourself with people that bring you up and that you feel camaraderie and community with, and aren't going to stab you in the back when times get tough, and root for you when you're doing well, and tell you the truth when you're not. Right?
Right.
Like, hey, I love you and I actually love going to happy hour, but you're doing like a bottle of wine on Tuesday, every Tuesday. Like, do you have those friends in your life? And then what about alcohol? It's antiseptic. What does it do to a good gut biome? So when I see our Napa Valley patients, they're on probiotics for life because they're constantly having an antiseptic that's going to dampen their good gut biome. So this brain gut axis and this gut brain axis really first really hit me when I read Gerber's book, The Second Brain, and then later they studied predominantly women who took real probiotics versus a dummy pill and had a reduction in generalized anxiety disorder when they were taking the real probiotic. So in the literature, we're starting to see, oh my gosh, what happens in the gut helps what happens in the brain. What happens in the brain helps control what happens in the gut.
Wow. Now, why does poor gut health make it so hard to fall asleep or stay asleep, even when someone is exhausted?
Yeah, so much inflammation can come off your gut, and so much immune regulation and not having inflammation comes off the gut. So basically, in a healthy gut, without bacterial overgrowth or fungal overgrowth or parasites or leaky gut and rupture or gastric ulcers or autoimmune issues like Crohn's or ulcerative colitis. In a healthy gut with good, healthy biome, you eat colorful fiber, right? The one thing they got right in the 80s is eat the rainbow. Purple cabbage, blue blueberries, red beets, green greens, yellow endive. The things they didn't get right in the 80s is cholesterol does not predict who's going to heart attack or stroke. Don't fear the fat. Salt is not Satan. Eggs are not the devil. Nerves do regrow, and beef doesn't give you heart disease, right? So forget just literally do almost everything opposite from the 80s, and you will live long and prosper. Except definitely listen to some good metal hair bands, right? And definitely put on some New Kids on the Block once in a while. But you have to eat those colorful fiber vegetables, right? And what those colorful fiber vegetables do is they feed your biome to then manufacture what's called short chain fatty acids. And some of the trade names for short chain fatty acids are butyrate, acetate, propionate. And those short chain fatty acids actually help mend leaky gut. Short chain fatty acids actually help prevent colon cancer and colitis. Short chain fatty acids help dampen local inflammation. So we load a Crohn's or ulcerative colitis patient with butyrate, like 6 capsules twice a day. And then short chain fatty acids help regulate metabolism. So if you need to put on weight post chemo, you'll put it on. If you need to take off weight because you're carrying 20 to 30 pounds inflammatory weight, short chain fatty acids and gut biome helps that through regulating metabolism and inflammation. And lastly, short chain fatty acids help poop. So many anxious people are also constipated people.
Yeah.
And if you've ever raised children, what does a baby do when it's constipated? It cries. What does adult do when it's constipated? It cries internally and gets toxic, right?
Yeah.
So when we're working with detoxification and making sure people are getting healthy and people are talking about glutathione and all these important, cool ideas, the most important thing is, did you poop? And if you didn't poop, toxins didn't get to the toilet. So
Yeah.
everything your liver gallbladder is trying to get to the sewer system didn't happen if you didn't poop. So short chain fatty acids and gut biome are involved in everything, managing inflammation, preserving brain health, setting up melatonin release in the evening and cortisol spiking in the morning, getting waste out of the system. About 80% of your detox happens through pooping, about 5 to 10% through sweating, and about 5 to 10% through kidney bladder. So you can do all the saunas you want. If you don't have a daily BM, you're gonna be toxic.
Yeah.
So much goodness happens through the gut, but really the main way it helps with brain health is managing inflammation or not managing inflammation. Because don't forget, every mood disorder known to human beings in the peer-reviewed medical literature is based in higher levels of inflammatory cytokines than healthy controls, the annoying people who are like, what's depression? Why would
Yeah.
Chris Cornell kill himself? Right? Yeah, good for you. Now, those of us who have been through depression and anxiety or OCD or get intrusive thoughts, which I've had gnarly suicidal ideation and depression from an illness called CIRS, chronic inflammatory response syndrome, where you're getting sick off water damaged buildings, moldy buildings. And I understand that
Right.
I can live a charmed life, have money to afford my mortgage, be married to a lovely wife, have these beautiful kids, and not care because my brain is on fire, right?
Yeah.
So again, I can't emphasize enough when you're dealing with mood issues, identify and treat the underlying causes of inflammation, and the gut is always guilty until proven innocent.
Mm, so true. So true. Now, how does the chronic inflammation keep people stuck in that wired but tired state, anxious during the day and restless during the night?
Yeah. So whenever you have anything inflammatory, if we did a dramatic example of sitting in poison oak, your
Hmm.
throat could close, you could be full of a skin rash, right? And you
Yeah.
go to the ER and they give you a prednisone taper.
Right.
And as a guy who started in hospice and riding with the ambulance, I love the ER, but the job of the ER is to make sure we don't die today. And then they discharge us back to our chronic illness. And no
Yeah.
one is there to scoop that up. So that's what I wanted to do as a healthcare clinic. Go, okay, let's solve and resolve these chronic mystery illness clinics um, type stuff. And when you take that prednisone, it's a whopping dose of imitation cortisol.
Yeah.
So when you're in chronic inflammation from getting another head injury or from getting an E. coli that ruptures your gut or living in a water damaged building, or you're heading into perimenopause, menopause, and no one's been talking to you about blood sugar and inflammatory states, et cetera, you get chronic inflammation and then your body tries to release self-made prednisone, cortisol, and norepinephrine, epinephrine, adrenaline to try and put out that fire. So it helps in the short run, but in the long run, you start getting wired and tired. You're exhausted, but you can't find that homeostasis of what we call immune modulation. So the immune system's not supposed to be turned off. then you get
Yeah.
cancer and viruses and bacteria. But the immune system's not supposed to be cranked up to 11 because then you're going to get all these inflammatory issues, achy brain, achy joints,
Yeah.
vaginal wall is going to disappear and now sex is uncomfortable, intestinal lining ruptures, and now you got ulcers and you don't digest and absorb food well, and so on and so forth, right? So
Right.
the whole goal is to say, okay, how do we stop the wired and tired? We go inflammation hunting, inflammation killing. We got to
Mhm.
find out where that is. And for sleep, two of the most underrated things for sleep are steady oxygen and steady fuel.
Mhm.
And the amount of people in America that go or or is endless. So
Yeah.
a couple key factors on sleep apnea. One third of all apnea patients are thin. I know you
Mhm.
have a lot of perimenopause, menopausal listeners, and I want to say that again. One third of all apnea patients are thin. Can we please stop looking for a 450-pound morbidly obese male as the only person in the room that desaturates or drops out oxygen, right? Apnea goes up post-menopause, and then apnea also goes up with altitude. So
Right.
practicing in Colorado, we see people at 5280 at Mile High, but we also see them at 8,700 Estes Park and 10,000 foot Breckenridge. Massive changes on an oximeter when you go up in altitude. So you
Mhm.
have to look for those things, and you have to realize that, okay, postmenopausal, if you're not sleeping well, your doctor should put an overnight oximeter on you. And the Aura and the Whoop are great, but they do spot check oxygen. Things like the Waylu and the Looky Ring you can buy, and they'll do a steadfast oxygen. The second thing is steady fuel. And if people haven't tried a Stello, the Libre had some recall, but the new generation is good. If you haven't tried a constant glucose monitor, it is so tragic what happens to my 3 a.m. blood sugar when I have a tequila blanco, 1 ounce with soda water at 5 p.m., right? Enjoy a little buzz, make a little good food, enjoy the family. At 3 a.m., my blood glucose goes down to 55. And
Wow.
when your blood glucose goes less than 80, if you ever have a blood draw from your news health fair or from your primary or from a funk med doc, and your glucose, fasting or not, is under 80, that is functional hypoglycemia. You're not going to function as well. Less than 65 is pathological. Now, conventional model starts to care. And then the ER starts to care when you're below 55 because you could actually die of a hypoglycemic event. So, blood sugar problems. And then the last one, I think we talked a little bit about the Blue Sky CBD sleep gels.
Mhm.
That is 25 milligrams of cannabidiol and 25 milligrams of cannabinol. That is zero THC. And that is helping perimenopause, menopause women sleep all over the country. My wife's one of them. She loves her Blue Sky sleep gels. But the reason they work is twofold, is they're a non-addictive, meaning not a benzo. You want to stay away from that little Xanny. That's gonna help you today while it gives you rebound anxiety and insomnia tomorrow. It helps the GABA receptor, put you into cool, calm, and collected, and then the little bit of CBD helps bring down inflammation.
Yeah.
So when I was at the retirement community for 10 years, what was the senior's favorite sleep drug? Tylenol PM and Advil PM. Why? Because the inflammation builds up all day. Your melatonin release, your hypothalamus, pituitary, and hippocampus don't cycle melatonin and cortisol well when you're inflamed. So take the Tylenol PM or the Advil PM, and it would be a sleep miracle. But then they destroy their kidneys, liver, and intestinal lining. Everyone knows you can't having a little bit of Tylenol for a fever ain't the end of the world. But if it's your weekend warrior thing, or you're a constant migraine sufferer taking those, you're going to beat down on your intestinal lining, liver, and kidneys. So I love those sleep gels for a way to get in there. And then if you're in that perimenopause, menopause, you have to have your doctor run FSH and LH, the hormones that tell the ovaries to make estrogen, progesterone. If they're starting to creep high, means you're probably starting your perimenopause, menopausal journey. And estradiol, progesterone, and total estrogens, estrone, estradiol, and estriol, all measured together. And if you're going perimenopause, menopause, talk to your doctor about bioidenticals, because estrogen enhances serotonin binding in the brain for enthusiasm. Serotonin also downstreams into melatonin to set up good sleep cycles. Progesterone binds in the brain to make GABA for feeling cool, calm, and collected. And when your progesterone drops, all of a sudden your sleep can go kaput. And I'm sure you know well over 100 women who have taken 100 to 200 milligrams of progesterone, perimenopause, postmenopause, and it has radically changed their life. With the sleep gels, they work, but I always tell people still check your blood sugar, still check your oxygen, still check your hormones because we want to address the underlying causes.
Exactly.
For the blue sky sleep gels, most people trial if you have trouble falling asleep, you take it 30 minutes before desired bedtime. So if I want to go to bed at 10:30, I take it at 10. If you have trouble staying asleep, you take it at 10:30. If you have both trouble falling and staying asleep, you take 1/2 hour before desired bedtime. And if in 2 nights it doesn't work, you double to two of the blue sky sleep gels. If that doesn't work, it's probably not your cat's meow. About 9 out of 10 people have dramatic change on their whoop and auras on their sleep. I mean, from the 40s into the 90s for some people. If you're hitting that for about 2 weeks and it's not working, you're missing something bigger. It could be the oxygen drops, it could be the blood sugar drops, could be the hormones are wildly off and have fallen off a cliff. And it's so important because sleep debt, insomnia, waking are all neuroinflammatory. If you want, and everyone's been there, right? My older didn't sleep. He woke 8 to 10 times a night when he was an infant. And I was like, good God, what's happened to me? I've aged 10 years in a year getting up with this child, right? It's like so crazy how aging sleep debt is and a good night's sleep. And then you wake up with more anxiety and you wake up wired and tired and depressed and so on and so forth. So I tell listeners all the time, we are grapes that are trying to turn into raisins slowly. And that's called graceful aging. When you don't get good sleep, when you lose your anabolic, DHEA, testosterone, estrogen, progesterone, when your blood sugar's off, when you're choking out all night sleeping, you turn from a grape into a raisin rapidly, right?
Yeah.
And then you don't want to go to the gym as much, and you don't have generosity to help out with your friend who just went through breast cancer, and on and on and on. And slowly your world starts shrinking, and then it's just you and Netflix, right? And that's so freaking depressing. So
Yeah.
we want to keep that vitality up, make sure we have steady oxygen, steady fuel, T3 thyroid's dialed up, our anabolics, DHEA, testosterone, estrogen, progesterone are going. We're working out, we're getting good night's sleep. And then the blue sky sleep gels can really help, especially perimenopause, but I also use them with elite athletes, people who are
Mhm.
flirting with overtraining, college kids who are like freaking out about midterms finals. It's just a way better place to go than prescriptive sleep medications or something like Unisom or something like that.
I love that. Now, for women with perimenopause or menopause, sleep can suddenly fall apart. Like, what's actually happening in the body, and what is more than that's just the hormones? What is really going on in the body?
Yeah, I think it's not giving hormones the credit for everything they do. So there's four things that are more important. T3 thyroid hormone, because thyroid hormone sets the metabolic rate of the pace of everything we do. How quickly we heal a cut, how quickly we motile our bowels, how quickly we detoxify in the liver, how quickly we make serotonin in the brain is set by T3. But what's more important than T3? Electrolytes. And we talked about your history before the pod, and I'm sure listeners know, but if you go hyponatremic, low sodium, you can seize. You can be puttering in the middle of an intersection in your bathrobe and slippers, totally demented, disoriented with low sodium. What's more important than that? Steady fuel, right? If I'm a glucose of 65 going, I'm ready to take the SATs. I'm going to be dumb as a box of rocks. And then the queen or the king, steady oxygen, right?
Yeah.
And so once we got those in place, now let's talk about the miracles of sex steroids, right? Estrogen and progesterone are first and foremost anti-inflammatory, immune balancing anabolics. That means they put out fires while modulating, balancing the immune system. So you don't go into lupus or you don't go into RA or you don't go into MS. Anabolics rejuvenate, regenerate, resuscitate the tissues, including things like leaky gut.
Right.
If you're just taking, we do a ton of DGL and glutamine and gut powders when we're working on leaky gut. But if the progesterone estrogen isn't intact, you're not going to really mend that. If the
Yeah.
DHEA and testosterone are in the toilet, you're really not going to mend that. But
Hmm.
that is also true for brain health. And this is why a harsh menopause is the start to your dementia, right?
Yeah.
It's a start to brain atrophy. And then so many women, will all of a sudden start going, "Oh, I'm anxious and I'm depressed. It must be a midlife crisis." Yeah, there's stuff you got to process, and usually daughters are taking care of aging parents. Let's be honest, the guys are fuddy-duddies. And there's all this intense stuff going on, and your other friend got cancer, and this one got hit by a drunken driver. So sure, mortality and who am I and what is life, and now that the kids are leaving, what's my life purpose? That's all real too. But
Yeah.
don't try processing all that
Exactly.
without estrogen telling your brain to bind serotonin for enthusiasm stronger. Don't try
Hmm.
processing that without progesterone telling the brain we're cool, calm, and collected. We got a lot of processing, but it's good. We can work through it. DHEA and testosterone binding dopamine for ambition and drive, feelings of self-worth, hopefulness, decisiveness, libido, and acetylcholine are molecule of memory and mental acuity. And
Yeah.
then back to that brain gut axis, serotonin does enthusiasm in the brain, it does motility in the gut.
Hmm.
Um, uh, Acetylcholine does memory and mental acuity in the brain, it does motility in the gut. So show me a room full of dementia, and I'll show you a room full of constipation. Right.
Hmm.
So the brain gut axis is so linked. So it's like not only does your brain get dull, but your guts get dull if you're
Right.
not keeping an eye on these hormones and all the ways they affect the body. But they're really lids on a jar. So
Yeah.
there's these genes that are ready to manufacture inflammatory proteins. Tumor
Hmm.
necrosis factor, interleukin 6, matrix metalloproteinase, and estrogen, progesterone, DHEA, and testosterone are lids. And this is menopause. Pop goes the weasel. And
Yeah.
now these genes that were dormant under control, they had a governor, regulator with estrogen, progesterone,
Yeah.
um, lose control, and they just start creating inflammation. Who gets frozen shoulder? Perimenopause, menopausal women or men in their 40s, early 50s? Women, right? It's like, right? The guys, it's coming, but it'll be there around 56 to 64, right?
Yeah.
And then even things like we get to work with these incredible moms. Like most important job on the entire planet is motherhood. Man, if you raise well-adjusted kids that don't shoot up schools for this world, God bless you, right? But after they have those babies, that pelvic floor needs anabolism. It needs rejuvenate, regenerate, resuscitate tissue. So little Timmy's a little older now, and Jenny's in eighth grade, and mom finally has time to really dive into a CrossFit group, right? But now she's having uterine prolapse, right? Every day in our clinic because motherhood was a total sacrifice fly, right? You brought us our beautiful kids, but now you deserve time and focus on let's find all the underlying cause of inflammation, get it out of your body, and let's make sure those anabolic steroids, DHEA, testosterone, estrogen, progesterone are intact so that
Yeah.
you can mend up all that stuff so you get to go have some fun and hike a mountain and check some things off your bucket list.
Right. I love it. Now, why do people feel like they're trying everything, like supplements, diet, sleep routines, but they're still not getting relief?
Yeah, because those are all topical treatments. So I thought I was going to be an ER doc. It made sense to me, and I loved riding with the ambulance. But then I got bumped into the principles of naturopathic medicine. And there's
Mhm.
something in naturopathic medicine called the therapeutic order. And some naturopaths follow it, others are just trying to sell you supplements and modalities.
Right.
And the number one rule of the order of therapy to graduate the chronically ill, the therapeutic order is remove obstacle to cure, right? So if I give you turmeric for your sleep apnea and I give you turmeric for the 5 glasses of wine you have every afternoon, it
Mm.
doesn't fix the blood sugar problems, right?
Right.
So you have to find the underlying causes and remove those. Step two is reestablish healthy regimen, where we talk about diet and lifestyle and a lot of stuff that you've helped so many listeners with over the years, right? Step three is stimulate the vital force. And maybe that's a little Wim Hof, maybe it's my sauna, maybe it's waking up and doing 2 minutes of jumping jacks to get the cortisol awakening response to kick in. The
Right.
stimulate the vital force, good homeopathy, good acupuncture, get the energetics and momentum of healing going. Step
Right.
four is tonify systems, where I do targeted nutraceuticals, and we do them all lab derived, like we were talking before. So I'm not going to give you vitamin D unless your vitamin D is an 18. If your
Yeah.
vitamin D is a 50 to 100, we're pretty good. If it's 70 to 100, we're optimized, right? If you live in the Florida Keys, you can make vitamin D from the outdoor sun. If you live up in Minnesota, you're never going to make enough vitamin D from being outside on a full sunny day. It's the
Right.
way the sun hits the latitude that allows our skin to make or not manufacture vitamin D. So I think the problem with functional integrated medicine, if I had one thing to criticize, is there you can get so much action off targeted nutraceuticals, diet and lifestyle, and wake up the vital force, and that'll bring you from like an F to a C plus. But if you
Yeah.
want to get to an A, you have to remove what's kicking your physiology in the shins, and that's
Yes.
where you have to go inflammation hunting, inflammation killing. And we were
Right.
talking like about this triangle of like migraines or anxiety or depression, gut issues, and sleep issues. And
Yeah.
another underlying cause is actually endogenous cannabinoid deficiency syndrome. And
Mhm.
basically, we make these God-given cannabinoids. If you feed your body healthy fat and move, you make immune modulating self-made cannabinoids. If you eat
Yeah.
healthy fat, there's a 20% increase in people who did a spin class.
Right.
Um, Pre and post endogenous cannabinoid blood draw. There's a 40% increase in these 9 British folk who got together and sung in a choir. So what I
Mhm.
just said is making music in a choir was even more potent than getting on the spin class. And we tell people to do both. We want our artists and our musicians and our theater friends to get into some CrossFit. We want our CrossFit friends to pick up a ukulele, right?
Yeah.
And make art and move plates, and realize you're both cool. We can all hang out at my keg party in Jersey circa 1991. And that's the best party is when everyone shows up, right? The flute player's making out with the high school quarterback. You're like, yeah, everyone, camaraderie, community, right? So bringing the endogenous cannabinoid diet and lifestyle, eat healthy fats, move your body, make art, create music, right? But when you have chronic inflammation, you have rheumatoid arthritis, you've had migraines forever, you've been an anxiety wreck for 20 years, you deplete your God-given endogenous cannabinoids. So now you literally have too low. That's where pure cannabidiol, not hemp, pure CBD isolate is proven in the literature to recycle those self-made cannabinoids. And one of them is called anandamide, which in Sanskrit means bliss molecule. So it brings up your bliss molecule. And then cannabidiol can also enhance 5-HT1A for serotonin enhancement, GABA A for GABA enhancement, and dopamine 2 for dopamine enhancement, which again, ambition and drive, enthusiasm, feeling cool, calm, and collected. So my favorite, I do research and development for Blue Sky CBD, which you know. My favorite is the original because
Right.
I'm prone to depression, not anxiety. My wife's favorite is the sleep gels because since perimenopause, menopause started talking, her sleep got thrown off. She pops 2 of those sky gels, and a half hour later, she's out. It's been a miracle. And bioidenticals, but the bioidenticals weren't enough for a good night's sleep. The max relief is CBD CBG, cannabigerol, which is really for those people who have super musculoskeletal pain, your fibro, your rheumatoid arthritis patients, and all that kind of stuff. And I asked Blue Sky, like, could we give your listeners something fun? And DRD, Dr. D, DRD is 30% off if you want to try any of those. But when I uh, tell people like where do you belong, the CBD Blue Sky CBD original, that
Mhm.
is for like mood, depression, anxiety. The max relief is for pain. And then the sleep gels are for sleep. And some people use multiple, but when you work with a supplement company on research and development, you know what works on repeat buyers. And
Yeah.
the number one product at Blue Sky is the sleep gels. They are a miracle. And I just have this kumbaya thought of a well-slept America is a peaceful America where everyone's
Yeah.
coming to my kegger again. And we don't care your
Yeah.
gender or political affiliation, or you got the skateboarder hanging out with the footballer, hanging out with
Yeah.
the person who's a material girl rocking out to Madonna and everything else. Like we want to
Right.
get well night slept. The second bestseller is the Max Relief Balm, which is like a deodorant stick that you rub onto any pain part. I have
Yeah.
that in my jiu-jitsu bag, my kickboxing bag, my ski bag, and definitely when I go play hoops with my son back, because my knees running with 16-year-olds on the court, that is the one part of me that's just not hanging in there as I age. So that endogenous cannabinoid deficiency syndrome, I always tell patients we're not getting older, we're getting more inflamed. And
Yeah.
another year around the sun depletes those endogenous cannabinoids. If you have chronic illness, constant migraines or joint pain or fibro or years and years of anxiety, you're for
Yeah.
sure overloaded with inflammatory cytokines and depleted on endogenous cannabinoids. So
Right.
those are some ideas to help out.
I love it. Now, is it possible for people to calm anxiety, improve sleep, and reduce inflammation at the same time when they're addressed at the root?
Yes, because they're all inflammatory based, right?
Mm.
You have to remember the thing we're missing when we just kind of take random supplements. And I love like Huberman and Peter Attia and Rogan and people getting ideas and Reddit and all that stuff. But if you're taking a supplement to try and fix your migraine, you forgot to ask the question, why migraine?
Yes.
Right? And again, um, low magnesium, low riboflavin, vitamin B2 can enhance a migraine, but it's usually not the total underlying cause of
Yeah.
that, right? So you want to start working with yourself and your provider or your providers on why inflammation. And the number one thing that doesn't get diagnosed in our chronically ill is CIRS,
Mm.
CIRS, or chronic inflammatory response syndrome, where people
Mhm.
are getting sick off water damaged buildings
Yeah.
that have mold or water damaged building bacteria known as actinobacteria. And then the number one cause of seizure in my clinic is endotoxin, sewer gas leak. So
Mm.
I can't tell you how many seizure cases we've solved and resolved by diagnosing CIRS secondary to endotoxin. Endotoxin is a fancy word for poopy caca, doo-doo manure, shiza, sewer gas. And we'll do this Swiffer cloth on the dust of their house and find high endotoxin levels, send over a plumber to stress test their sewer main, and we find sewer leak in the
Oh,
house. And
wow.
we remove the sewer leak. We work with them on the Shoemaker protocol, or what's also called the CIRS protocol, and their seizures stop happening. All right, it's the
Wow.
number one cause of seizures in my clinic. Then there's other things like head injury and apnea and what we were talking about, bacterial and viral encephalitis and those kind of things that kick off microglial cells, those brain immune cells that once they turn on, they're really hard to turn off. That's
Yeah.
another place where I think, some strong pure cannabidiol, the original, can help. So
Right.
you have to go inflammation hunting, inflammation killing if you're just not feeling yourself and you're struggling with sleep issues, anxiety, gut issues.
Wow. Now, if someone's listening or feels overwhelmed, what's the one place they can start that supports gut health and the nervous system?
Yeah, it's a good question. So back to the basics. Dr. Ellen Gaby, who taught my diet and nutrient therapy at Bastyr, said 30 chews per bite. Hippocrates said, drink thy food and chew thy drink. What he was saying is if you're putting down a shake, you should be chowing on that shake a little bit. If a steak goes
Yeah.
down your gullet, it should be completely liquefied.
Right.
So some people, whatever your spiritual background is, you can say grace, give a prayer, thank you for the food, um, eh, get in parasympathetic, surround yourself with good company. If you're alone and you're feeling super lonely, don't watch a horror movie while you eat a meal. And if you're watching, some NFL or something like that, don't watch mindlessly. 30 chews per bite. Get
Yeah.
yourself into parasympathetic nervous system. The next thing to do is there's so many good anti-inflammatory diets out there, right? There's autoimmune paleo, there's carnivore, there's healthy versions of vegan, and so on and so forth. When you look at Game Changers, the thing I don't like about that movie is they're not talking about all the animal protein eating tribes that also didn't have any chronic disease, right?
Right.
What's the common denominator between some of the blue zones that do more plant-based diet and some of the blue zones that do more animal protein diet? They're not
Right.
eating processed foods. They're not eating breads and pastas and Snicker bars and sugar all day. So just a whole foods diet. Get back to eating the rainbow.
Yeah.
Make sure when you look down your plate, it's colorful. And then for most people, you want to have good macros. You want some good animal protein, some healthy fats, and some healthy, colorful, fibrous vegetables. And just that alone is a great place to start. My nutritionist wrote Revitalized Digestion, which is a
Mhm.
great program with lots of pictures in it. If people just like, I need more ideas, right? You obviously offer your listeners so many resources, right? But just any of the anti-inflammatory diets, slow it down, chew your
Yeah.
food, 30 chews per bite, and then watch for that low blood sugar. The problem with most anxiety is it hits the blood sugar already happened, and now
Yeah.
you're anxious. So if you tend to be hangry or irritable or agitated or anxious, you want to start eating on the clock.
Right.
So breakfast, lunch, mid-afternoon snack, and dinner. Breakfast, lunch, mid-afternoon snack, and dinner. Most of the super anxious people are thin, lanky, and they don't make good intermittent fasters. Um, and they will never make it from lunch till dinner without a blood sugar drop. So
Right.
that, 4 p.m. avocado mayonnaise chicken salad with plantain chips
Mhm.
get you through to that 6, 7, or if you're in the city, maybe 10 p.m. dinner, right? Sometimes you're working these crazy hours and you
Yeah.
don't get to dinner until 10. Well, you can have a couple of micro meals in between lunch and dinner to carry over.
I love that idea. Now, what's one mistake people make when trying to fix sleep, especially when anxiety or hormones are involved?
I think going to sleep meds before looking for the underlying cause. And,
Yeah.
I'm not going to have judgment on any patient that walks through my door. I have a contract with God that you could be bulimic or shooting up heroin. And the way I treated my body from the age of 16 to 20 set me up to never judge somebody. I don't have that
Right.
authority. And you'll watch people who come in on benzos, and there's something called bind benzodiazepine induced neurological dysfunction. We help taper benzos with CBD, high dose L-theanine, and sometimes lithium orotate. The lithium orotate, the mineral, not lithium carbonate, the bipolar med.
Yeah.
And it's amazing how easily they got put on that benzo. And it's amazing that 10 years went by and they're still on it.
Mm.
And bind benzodiazepine induced neurological dysfunction causes multi-symptom, multi-system illness. It can give people body symptoms all over. It can give them rebound anxiety. It can give them benzo belly, where now they have all these gut issues. It can give them musculoskeletal pain and fibro symptoms. It's crazy how people got put on those so easily. Then you have your Ambien and your Lunesta. Those are not sleep meds, they're hypnotics. So
Yeah.
what happened is you took it, you went to bed, like 2 minutes later, you woke up 8 hours later. Did you go into deep restorative sleep? No. Is
Hmm.
that sometimes an appropriate med for a crisis, like a mother who just lost her child and hasn't slept for 8 weeks and is about to go cuckoo from the grief and the sleep debt? Maybe there's a place for that, right? But I have one patient who drove down I-25, that's our big highway here in Colorado, to the ER because he cut the top of his thumb off making a midnight snack. Um, Drove in his car, got his finger sewed up, checked out at the ER, and drove home. Doesn't remember anything
Wow. I've
on
heard stories
Ambien,
like that.
right? That's my crazy hypnotic story, right? People have chopped down trees and done all kinds of stuff on Lunesta and Ambien, right? So they don't help you sleep. So before you rush to that, Try something like the Blue Sky sleep gels. Work with an overnight oximeter and a glucose monitor. Check out your alcohol intake. The munchies from weed is a hypoglycemic attack on the bloodstream. So I'm not anti-weed, but I'm anti lying about biochemistry. You're getting a blood sugar drop for most people when they hit some herb, right? And
Yeah.
wine and weed both help people fall asleep, but then corrupt sleep architecture. So they're very seductive in that you take that little gummy, it helps you fall asleep, but it doesn't help you get into deep restorative sleep and stay asleep. So a lot of
Right.
times we'll use the sleep gels as we're tapering off of gummies,
Yeah.
but what you did with your blood sugar at 11 a.m. affects what happens at 11 p.m. and 3 a.m. So
Yeah.
getting in front of steady oxygen, steady fuel, and then puppies. What happens to a puppy when you don't run them? They poop the carpet, claw the furniture, right?
Mhm.
So getting an exercise, critical, and then moderate your caffeine intake. If you're cranking in the caffeine after noon, especially as a thin, lanky body type, you're going to be a hummingbird on crack when it comes time to sleep, right? And we want you to be ready for decompression, ready to go into deep restorative sleep so you can wake up zippity doo dah.
Right. Now, you work with a lot of patients who need common and inflammation support without sedation or dependency. What should people look for, and what kind of tools and supplements should they have so they don't make the things worse than what it already is?
Yeah. So, two things that are constantly low in Americans is vitamin D3.
Hmm.
Um, and 2000 IUs to 5000 IUs daily is what most people need to get to lab range 70 to 100. To
Yeah.
die less of all cause mortality, to die less of everything, diabetes, dementia, heart attack, stroke, all that stuff is 32 on lab. When you're
Hmm.
trying to turn off inflammation, autoimmunity, anxiety, depression, you want 70 to 100 on lab, and you need at least 2,000 to 5,000. I feel comfortable sharing that in the podcast. Some of our patients need 10,000 for a month or two, but then we restock the pond and then we can
Yeah.
pull back on that. Vitamin D affects every single disease known to humans. Diabetes improvement, dementia improvement, increases brain-derived neurotrophic factors, so you don't get dementia in the first place. Skin issues, eczemas, joint pain, so on and so forth. But it also turns on the enzyme that turns the tryptophan in turkey slices into serotonin. So if you
Mm.
just eat the turkey and you got the tryptophan, you'll go to 5-HTP, but you won't get into D3. Now, the
Right.
next one is seed oils versus fish oil. You have to go hunting for all those seed oils, canola oil, peanut oil, also labeled as linoleic acid, safflower, sunflower, soy, corn. Those are all inflammatory oils. You want them out of your life. And then
Yeah.
you want to take about 2,000 milligrams of EPA plus DHA without healthcare supervision. I'll go
Yeah.
sometimes up to 4 to 6 grams of EPA DHA with an RA patient or a SIRS patient or so on and so forth. If you have arrhythmia, that's the one time you want to do fish oil under supervision. And the medical literature says don't do over 2,000 milligrams, but I would
Hmm.
just do that under supervision. That is what the indigenous tribes had. They didn't have seed oils in them, and they had omega 3s from wild buffalo eating grass and green lip mussel and the Maori who and the indigenous in New Zealand who had perfect teeth, no osteopenia, osteoporosis, and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
The indigenous in Portland that ate Copper River salmon was 2/3 of their diet.
Wow.
Lewis and Clark wrote about their lustrous, beautiful hair and their beautiful skin and smiles and their peaceful affect. And it just felt good. They
Yeah.
look good from the inside out, right? Just imagine that clean river pulling Copper River salmon for 2/3
Right.
of your diet. Woof, that's good living right there. So those are two important ones. From there, I go into pure cannabidiol. And interestingly, a lot of your fats, including fish oil, transitions all the way in the end into endogenous cannabinoids. It supports your self-made cannabinoids. And when someone's really inflamed, I just say get the Blue Sky original and I'll do one full dropper twice a day. Blue Sky
Okay.
also has the Sky gels on the website. They have all these ways where you can take quizzes and say what's right for me and what's my dosage, right?
Right.
Once you get in front of that, your D's up, your seed oils are out, you did an anti-inflammatory diet, you're chewing your food again, your omega-3s are pumped up, maybe you did some Blue Sky Original. Now we got to get moving, right? And if you have exercise intolerance, go, but start slow,
Right.
right? Walk around the block once today, walk around the block twice tomorrow, right? If you're overtraining with CrossFit or something like that, alternate with some yoga, alternate every other day. When you do a big pump class, resistance training, your lactic acid builds up and triggers all of your anabolic steroids, DHEA, testosterone, growth hormone for 48 hours. And
Right.
then it falls off and you need to hit it again, right?
Hmm.
So a good routine is like a good lift on Monday, maybe a yoga class on Tuesday, a good lift on Wednesday, tag along with your wife and Pilates on Thursday and get embarrassed. True story. And then maybe on Friday, we go for a nice hike and get some green exercise in there, right? So just remember resistance training at least every other day. And the people who
Right.
are hitting hardcore CrossFit 6 times a week, you're overdoing it. You got to
Right.
get more cardio and flexibility in there. So.
I love it. I love it. This has been amazing. Tell me a little about your services and your products that you offer.
Yeah, so I'm a doctor of chronic mystery illness. I started a clinic, Roots and Branches Integrated Healthcare. You can find that at Dr. Dorninger, Dor as in Robert, Nin as in Nancy, Ingrid, Nancy, Ger.com. We have 6 providers in total here, and we like to take on chronic mystery illness, deep dive in the underlying causes. We do substantial, very targeted objective labs and imaging to prove, confirm, or deny our thoughts are true or not true. All the things that are true are your underlying causes that we address. All the things that are not true are places we don't spend time, money, and energy on anymore to graduate you back to a joyous, creative, productive life. That's my mainstay. I also started the conference SIRS-X, which is made for environmental professionals and academics, healthcare providers, health coaches, patient advocates to come under one roof and solve this stupid illness, chronic inflammatory response syndrome, which is really about building better buildings,
Hmm.
remediating toxic buildings, and doing the Shoemaker SIRS protocol. And then I do research and development for Blue Sky CBD. And honestly, I took that job because one of my old lab salesmen that I used to grind about cardiovascular markers, I'd be like, doesn't replace a heart scan. Bring me something real. And they needed someone to challenge. And I said, you know what? I don't know anything about cannabidiol. Mrs. Smith rubbed some balm that her neighbor made on her knee in the morning and it helped, but she doesn't know the dosage and how much. My other patient, true story, took a full hemp extract, which has a little bit of THC in it. She was sensitive that she was brushing her horse and hallucinated
Oh, wow.
because she's a super cheap date on THC, or the amount that they say was in there, which is should be 0.3% THC or less, was not true. So
Right.
I took the job and I spent 90 hours combing the peer-reviewed literature. And whether it's for anxiety or Parkinson's or spasticity from MS or depression or getting off cigarettes or Alzheimer's in mice or breast cancer cell lines, it's pure cannabidiol that's in the published literature. And that's the Blue Sky CBD original. But probably the most joy, like for me on depression and anxiety, is that one. The
Wow.
balm for some pain, but the most joy has been watching those sleep gels help people sleep and not get hooked on benzos
Yeah.
and be able to avoid those hypnotics because I did acupuncture for helping people off cocaine and heroin in the Bronx at Lincoln Recovery Center like 25 years ago. Some of the most soulful work I ever did. But you know what's even harder to get off of for some people? Benzos. So I got a
Mhm.
better idea. Let's help them sleep without ever needing to try one.
Right.
Right. So, and again, if you're in hospice or you can't sit still for your breast cancer radiation and you're pinned down and you need half a tab of Ativan, there's a very small place in healthcare where we can do responsible prescribing with these things. But my goal is to give that up. So, that's that. I have my podcast, The Vitality Hour, which is pretty SIRS heavy, but we also talk about preventing heart attack and stroke, and that's on YouTube, The Vitality Hour. And then I post a lot of good, solid, honest medical literature knowledge on my Instagram, which is at Dr. Eric Dorninger. And I just love what you're doing. I want to support what you're doing. I want to make sure that the world gets access.
Yeah.
And when I saw the opportunity to do your podcast, I was like, this is a woman who's trying to get everybody access to better decision making, to finding underlying causes, to diet and lifestyle that really allows people to thrive. So I'm totally honored, and would love to come back whenever you have me. But I hope this helps your listeners.
Oh, today was just an outstanding day. Dr. Eric, you were phenomenal. You really gave a lot of amazing information. And there's so many people I see that, I believe in integrated medication. There are sometimes when we need a medication when our bodies cannot heal on its own. But there are so many times when people can heal their bodies if they took the time to understand what their bodies are saying to them, because our bodies are always talking to us. Our body is telling us what it needs. And the easiest thing to do is to take a blood test and find out what's going on in your body and what's not right, and then balance in your body and looking for the root cause. There's so many times they go to the ER, they go to their doctor, and they're telling them about the symptoms, but there's an underlying root cause why they're getting those symptoms. And that's, for so many, it's always overlooked. And right away a prescription is written and it gets the symptom to go away, but then side effects come from that. So now they have more issues. They go back to the doctor. Now this is happening to me. Well, either they change the medication or they give them another medication to override those symptoms. And before you know it, you have a whole pharmacy in your bathroom, and they're not getting better. And sometimes medications they collide with each other, and you start to get even worse side effects. And it's really, if we took the time to understand our bodies and we looked at the natural ways, surgeries can be avoided many times. You can find the root cause, you can get things to go away naturally. I always say, do your research before you jump into these things, because medication is not always the answer. Medication can sometimes destroy the body, and it could cause long-term side effects. And there's many medications out there that they don't even know what the long-term side effects are, because they haven't been doing enough research yet to prove how long it takes for other side effects that might, because the medication's always only been in research for 10 years or so, and so they don't know what's going to happen. We really need to understand, if you really want to have good overall health, you have to understand what your body is saying to you. And I really love that you have this clinic and that you are teaching people about, the most common things that people go through that cause so much, pain and so much discomfort in their lives, and stop them from, being able to do the things they really love. Because when you have migraines, or if you have sleep issues, if you can't, if you have gut health issues and inflammation, it affects every part of your life. It causes chronic pain, the inflammation in some people. There's a list of things. We can go on forever, but take the time to go and go to a doctor, go to a naturopath, go to someone like yourself who understands the root cause, who understands gut health, and figure out what the root cause is. And I'm so glad that you came on the show today. You shared your knowledge. You were so detailed and so informative. And I really hope the people listening understand that there are many things out there like CBD and the different products that you sell too that can really change a person's life. And if you take medications already, if you take seizure medications or heart medications or anything like that, talk to your doctor, make sure you can take it. And if you can, think really seriously about looking the natural way of trying to heal your body. And thank you so much, Dr. Eric, for today. And, if you're listening or struggling with sleep, anxiety, gut issues, inflammation, or menopause, this episode is a reminder that these symptoms are connected and that your body isn't broken. So, when you support the systems soften. So, quick question for our people out there who are listening: which of these feel the hardest right now? Is it sleep, anxiety, gut health, or inflammation? Drop it in the comments. I read them. And if this episode helped you, share it with someone who really needs the relief and the help out there. And Dr. Eric, once again, thank you so much for coming on the show. I really enjoyed all the knowledge you shared today. And I really appreciate that you're out there helping all these people. It's an honor to know you.
Thanks, Stacey. Appreciate you.
I appreciate you too. You have a great day.